Hey guys, what's going on? This is David Chen, and we're back for season 3 of Pananomics, and we're switching up a little bit this time. We're going to bring you the most innovative, exciting people. We're going to talk about how to grow your brand, how to create yourself the wealth and the intelligence and everything that you want in life, as well to inspire yourself and just be overall happy. And as you know, last week we had Tommy Fan coming from Nike Game, and this week we got a big name coming as well. Rob Kligman from GFUEL, Vice President of Marketing Operation, and also former VP of the WWE and a writer as well. So we're going to get to talk about all that. Rob, how you doing here today?
Awesome, David. Thank you for having me. An honor to be on this podcast, as voted by New York Weekly as the #1 podcast. So I'm stoked to be on it. Thank you for the invitation.
No, thanks for coming, man. You know, we talk a lot about business, and right now the economy is just, it's crazy, right? I mean, this last year, I think you and I alone would probably say that the economy's is what nightmares are made of, right? Like, I've never seen anything on a brand and product where you have countries going against each other, potential other wars happening, right? You have parties divided. You have a recession that is there. You have interest rates at 7%, where 6 months ago you couldn't even buy a freaking house because the market was so hot. Now it's completely curved out. And brands and companies have to switch and adapt towards that, right? And make all those crazy things. And you're the guy who has to figure it out with the market and operations and put that through. Tell me, how did you start off your life and end up in this amazing position a couple years later?
So funny. My whole career has spanned through advertising and sponsorship sales. So my career has been going and asking for the money. All of a sudden, I enter into GFUEL, and now I'm managing the money and figuring out how to spend the money.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, except when you hit economies like we are in now, where sometimes that pullback has to occur because you're starting to forecast and understand what the future is going to look like. In this case, 2023. But GFUEL is a great company. There's nothing more on the edge and Gen Z than GFUEL. When you're at a company where customers both consume and also collect our products, it's a pretty cool business model. But to your point, in my current role, we have to kind of evaluate where the economy is going to go, what the consumers are going to do, and then what products we need to kind of put forth that are going to make a lot of sense in this day and age. So it's an exciting time, but you definitely have to think a little bit differently in an economy like this.
So, you know, you mentioned 4 key things. You talk about the background, the products, the consumer, and all the things are important because without the consumer, there is no product. Without the product, there is no branding. Without the branding, there is no money, right? So all 4 are what you need to do and go from there. And this is such a prestigious, highly intelligent role, right? But you started off differently, right? Tell me about your career, your initial bio, how you did this, how you traveled the ranks, got to WWE, get to GFUEL, and a very nice synopsis. And we'll dig in depth because this is a hard thing to do. I don't think people understand. Like, you're literally basically trying to put as much intelligence as you can, and you're betting with the best horse that's going to give you the best results because your job's on the line, your company's job's on the line, your team's on the line, and you're trying to find the best thing with the economy. And it really requires one major thing, which is confidence, right? You have to have real supreme confidence in what you're trying to do. When probably deep down inside, I'm like, man, I don't know if this is the right decision, but I'm gonna go with my best gut, and really have to sell your team to do that as well. Those are special skill sets, man. So where did you learn it? Tell us about how that all started.
Yeah, so I was an student athlete in college, graduated from Rice University in Houston, Texas. And then
let's go, Texas!
Exactly. So I went west. I thought it was the easiest way to get out of mom and dad's house. So my first job was MTV Networks. At that time, MTV was truly on the cusp of everything that was going on. They were the IT network, the IT sort of content piece that everyone tuned in to see and sort of was the go-to. If you're going to break some news around music or entertainment, you went to MTV. And I thought it was the best foundation for me to actually learn and understand sponsorship and advertising and how to build content, but also create and resonate advertising and brand dollars in a way where it was non-intrusive. And MTV did it really well, where they would take something like Total Request Live out of the studio, put it into a ski resort, and all of a sudden charge a lot more money for that. So I really learned on the ground floor and the foundation that I built at MTV Networks, which was second to none. At that point in time, it was a pretty interesting sort of time for media in general. The internet was starting to boom. It was probably the first time that we had seen really good growth within digital. And I literally went to a lot of the execs at MTV and said, hey, if you were in my position, what would you do? And many of them said, hey, Rob, I did the same thing that you're thinking about, but I did it years earlier, where I went from broadcasting to cable when everybody thought cable just had no real solution and or future. And they all said, dive into digital quick. So I went into an internet startup in Los Angeles, pretty much a couple doors down from MTV Networks in Santa Monica, California. And that company was called Broadband Sports. We dove into sports. We wanted to become that ESPN of sports, and started to buy up the official rights of a lot of different athletes. And that was probably the first time in my life that I learned how important talent rights were and the ability to really manage talent. Unfortunately, the dot-com boom didn't last long. It was the first bubble that kind of burst, but I say it all the time. You can learn a lot from going to a company that probably doesn't do things as correct as you probably would have wanted, because you had your hands on so many different aspects of the business. You got a chance to learn so many different areas. So from there, went into fantasy sports. I think fantasy sports at that point in time was termed gambling. But I kept saying, hey, there's a lot of purchasing power with the folks that are playing fantasy. And look at it today. It is probably one of the biggest things that people do. With Super Bowl Sunday coming down the pipeline, you can actually see what people are doing from a fantasy and obviously a betting perspective. So all three areas, both MTV, Broadband Sports, and the fantasy company Sandbox.com that I had gone to, all were sort of at the forefront of what was happening, and built a great foundation for me to get to where I am today. From that point, I went on to Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated was sort of that dream come true, right? As a kid growing up, you tear off the covers, you put it on your walls, and you either aspire to be an athlete, aspire to be an advertising sales guy, or a photographer, because they were the king of photography at that point. It was a dream come true, but it was also an opportunity for me to learn experiential. We would take a franchise like Swimsuit and we would pull it out of the magazine in many ways and bring it to life in an example, Las Vegas at a hotel, create certain rooms to resemble what the photo shoots look like. And all of a sudden now you have an experiential event where fans can actually meet with advertisers and understand a little bit more about the brand in person. So SI was pretty important to me to learn that experiential element. And then from there, I entered into a company called World Wrestling Entertainment, and I spent the last 8 years there. Interesting fact, I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, and World Wrestling Entertainment was based in Stamford, Connecticut. So it was kind of an interesting twist for me to actually find a work environment in my hometown that I'd known about for years and was a fan of at 8, 9 years old. And then now having a chance to represent the talent, the superstars as they're called, in front of major advertisers across the world, and have a chance to take on a property like WrestleMania, which is one of the biggest in the world, and have a chance to go out and pitch that to advertisers. I was lucky enough and I think strategic enough to bring on a major advertiser like Snickers, who ended up sponsoring them for 7 straight years and being the first opportunity for anyone to ever sponsor that marquee event. So, when you look back at my career, I really were able to kind of understand experiential, understand digital and sponsorship and IP rights, and really put it all together at World Wrestling Entertainment for that last 8 years, which was really an incredible ride.
Holy cow! I mean, I had to get a little towel, wipe off all this heat that you've been spitting. You basically have lived the freaking dream of every kid in the freaking world. Let's effing go, Rob. Holy cow, man. You're a gangster, bro. You're a gangster. I dance for you a little bit, man. It's amazing. I mean, good Lord, man. SIMTV, fantasy sports, WWE. I mean, dude, like 12-year-old you must be giving yourself a high F and 5, because 12-year-old you me is jumping around going, let's go, Rob. This is amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a pretty much, as a great friend of mine termed, an entourage type of life, because I really were embedded into brands that are so iconic and so amazing in today's world and landscape that sometimes you got to pinch yourself and say, you know what, I was really lucky and in the right place at the right time to experience those iconic brands.
You know what's so amazing about this journey in this life, man? I think a lot of times, as busy as we are, as hardworking as we get, as competitive as we are, because we want to be in these positions to provide the best value and experience, right? Because we're proud of it. We're proud of people being happy. Bro, Rob, how does it feel that you're actually changing people's lives in ways that you can't imagine? The same way that Hulk Hogan and WrestleMania 3 changed our lives with Ultimate Warrior, right? Or Jordan in 91 versus Magic, right? Because we're the same age. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. The conflict of literal errors, you know, when WWE and NWO came out and it was the Monday Night Wars, and we're in high school and it's going to college, and now we're going to college trying to be big adults and not trying to watch it, but secretly watching it behind the scenes because everyone's watching UFC, right? Like we've had these conversations. You're changing the world, man. How does that feel, man? I mean, it's such a amazing thing that you're literally changing people's lives down to the models and the brands. Like, wow, man, congratulations on that.
Yeah, to that point, I guess my last year at Netflix at WWE, I was able to do something that I felt was game changing to that point. I worked with a brand, Netflix in this case. They had two different movies coming out, and the opportunity that was really the carrot at the end of the stick for me was breaking through storyline. It is coveted. Vince McMahon does not let anyone break through storyline. Just it doesn't happen. It's what's coveted. And I was able to present an opportunity to him and the team and the staff of writers that here's a great opportunity to intertwine a piece of this Netflix movie into storyline and create a buildup for it. And then obviously have it catapult at the event that we did it at. And we did it twice. It was a multi-million-dollar program, but it broke barriers at the World Wrestling Entertainment that had never been done for 35 plus years. And for me to be able to get that towards the end of my tenure was truly huge. It was one of those things that, just like signage on the mat, which we tried often to do, and we broke through on the runway towards the tail end as well, but storyline was never touched. So in terms of breaking through, that was one of the high notes for me at World Wrestling Entertainment that, still lives today as something that, is talked about very often, especially from the Netflix standpoint and within the WWE, fandom.
Dude, one thing, it's funny because when I talk to guys like you and me and I go sit there, there's almost like a tortured movement. I'm gonna tell you what I talk about this. You're so ahead of the game because you and I understand one thing. Who cares what the brand is? As long as it's everywhere, someone sees it, someone's gonna buy it because my product can adapt towards the demographic. We've never had this conversation. I know exactly how you think. The problem with that is we run into two types of people, right? The one guy who sits there and tells you it can't be done because it's always been done this way, which is why the numbers are always these numbers, right? And you've seen what happened to the companies. I'm going to take this back to MTV and I'll bring it to WWE. And you talked about how the brand dollars went digital. Now, during that time, we remember MTV was it. We were consuming real world. We were consuming the whole basis reality TV. It shook the whole entire industry because people were like, what do you mean reality TV is now going to be actors and actresses? Remember how difficult that was for actors and actresses? They were so upset about that, right? And the ones with the digital dollars, what happened to some of the brands that you saw, or what was the success story where you saw on MTV that a brand dollar understood that it was needed to be in the digital space and that brand really kicked off? Because that was ahead of the game, like you said, at WWE, right? Brands have to be everywhere. What case study did you see that was just significant that you really liked when that had happened with MTV? And which one did you not like when you saw?
Yeah, the movie industry, entertainment industry had a pretty big synergy with MTV. Again, it's an 18 to 24-year-old demographic. They knew how to take something to the forefront by utilizing actors and actresses in content. And I think when you think about making brands into content, again, content is king. You can't say it enough. And when you can integrate the brand messaging into content in a seamless and intrusive way, it's going to resonate, and it's going to resonate in a lot better format than just the 30-second spot. So we saw it from the entertainment industry pretty often with movies and theatrical launches and trailers with ways to integrate it in a very seamless way. And it could be as simple as having an actor in studio at Total Request Live or taking part in some sort of content feature. But they did it well. They did it, I thought, the best in the landscape, and were able to kind of capitalize on it.
And by capitalizing on that market and the ability to do it, you saw the digital space, and now you're ahead of the game.
Yep.
This is the 90s, right? So now you're like, wait a minute, we can stream this. There's Napster, there's LimeWare. We were like, do you ever feel like you were in just the perfect place in time in life to really understand that because you were in college around the space and kind of going from there? Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I think with Napster and then burning CDs and burning music.
You never did that. That was illegal, buddy.
Yeah, no, never did. I heard about it. But it was a transition to music. And it was a time where, it was really difficult to get it. And then all of a sudden you blinked and now you can have 1,000 songs in an instant. And it was changing. I have to tell you, I feel lucky with the time that I lived.
Right.
We both have experienced huge growth in so many different verticals and so many different technology pieces that it's just incredible.
Dude, it goes from like calling mom and calling your house and going, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Kligman, can I talk to Rob? To now leaving Texas and just saying, yo, give me a call. Like, but we remember you had to call and you had to be polite. Like you had to go and knock on the door, right? You had to go, like, you can text the girl and be like, hey, come out and hang out with me. It was like, can I come in here? Like it was hard for us, man. Like we worked hard. We paved the way for these young guys, man.
It's very true. It's very true. Technology has just changed everything.
And when you talked about that storyline and changing technology, that's when you accelerate 20 years later from the knowledge that you had. And we go back to that WWE experience where Vince doesn't let people do that, right? I mean, it's been known. We have a lot of friends who worked with Vince, right? That go through this thing, but kudos to him because a billionaire is a billionaire. It is what it is, right? The results are always the results. And I always tell this to people, man. I was like, as an entrepreneur, you have to have so much faith in yourself that your faith has to be bigger than everyone else's doubts, bigger than your mom's doubts, your dad's doubts, your friend's doubts, your wife's doubts. You have to have so much effing faith in yourself. And Rob has done that to take these things like putting G Fuel and WWE. I remember, this is one thing that we did at NAC. I'll tell you this. We have all these celebrities. Urlacher plays in a game. We had Sina de Oro, Sin Cara, he played in a game. We had Aaron Jones play, and they're playing against each other in gaming. The reason I did that, no one understood, is the same reason you put together this Xavier Woods thing, right? Where you realize Xavier plays it. You and I know that the bodybuilders and the gamers, everyone is playing video games offline because the travel schedule is growing, right? Everybody's on a Switch. It's a way to stay competitive without they're hurting themselves. You're not going to play basketball anymore because the insurance won't let you do it anymore, right? They're insured. They're hurt. So now they're playing video games. But you did something, and I remember when I saw this, I said to myself, I was like, whoever had put this together understood this the same way I understood our model, which was celebrities all game, and you give them access to them in a real world where they can just be them with all of the hoopla, and then you put that together with their community, with the storyline of WWE and the Netflix movie, and you synergize the whole world from an imaginary to a virtual live experience or fan experience, entertainment experience, to a real life experience while everyone could still be themselves. Man, that multiverse thought process that you did was magical. How did you have the goals to do that? I mean, you're talking events, but something completely different. How did you do that, Rob?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to something simple. Every brand wants something different, right? That's the name of the game. How can you continue to innovate, and how can you continue trying to do something new and different? And that's what drives me every day of the week, to be honest with you. It's always thinking about what's next and how do we do something that's a little bit unconventional, but different and catches the eyeballs and the respect of our fans. That brings me to a point with G Fuel. I was able to approach G Fuel when I was working for World Wrestling Entertainment and ask them if the opportunity could exist to marry two different worlds. One world would be The Undertaker, who we all know is iconic inside of WWE. And then the other world was Dr. Disrespect, who is under the roster of G Fuel from a talent perspective. And how do we bring it together content-wise, kind of tease it a little bit on the web in the sort of internet verse, and then kind of take that storyline out and really start to create some curiosity, create some buzz, and then ultimately come down to a solution of the two iconic figures meeting in a studio. In this case, it was Dr. Disrespect studio, but that's just another great example of, how do you create worlds? How do you create content that's going to resonate with fans of both generations?
Oh my God. I mean, it's so crazy. You thought Dr. Disrespect, now Dr. Disrespect's a big man.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing. People don't realize that guy's 6'8". I'm 6'5", and people don't realize that. They think I'm a big man. But Dr. Death's 6'8". And then you got the Taker, 6'9", 6'10",
Yep.
big dudes. In Dr. Respect, he's not a thin cat. I mean, he looks like a freaking wrestler, right? He's out there, right? The image of these two massive figures, the physical specimens, no one talks about that intelligence that you did, but everyone visually saw that. And that's why I want to break this down, because people don't give credit to how hard and how much you had to think about this, right? Then I saw the second part of it. Now you have these two guys going at it, and what's the best way they're fighting? It's going to be through the way you set it up, right? That visual that's going from there. When you were putting that together and the roles were synergizing and energizing, what was one of those key things that you said to him? You're like, this is going to work because the demographics are the same, because what you realized, it wasn't WWE fans, it wasn't freaking gamer fans, it was the demographic of Generation X, Z, and Millennials that you put together.
Yeah.
Right? And you had to pitch that in corporate, man. That's not easy.
No, and you scratch your head a little bit at just saying those names, because there is a 30-year difference between both, but both are very much characters of WWE. Dr. Disrespect looks like he should be in the WWE, so it makes a lot of sense. And then just building a storyline, because everything comes down to a storyline, and we were able to build it. It was a 7-day storyline that really created that buzz, and things started to occur inside of Dr. Disrespect's studio. His Lambo gets blown up. The color of the studio starts to change into more of a purple theme, just like the Undertaker's theme. And it really started to catch on, where people were questioning what in the world was happening. So it was exciting. And then from that standpoint, we then tried to figure out ways to take Dr. Disrespect into the WWE universe. So that was a whole fun event as well. And that's what it's all about. It gets back to doing something that's never been done before, and doing it for the first time, and doing it in a contextually relevant way where it's non-intrusive to fans, but extremely relevant to that core base.
And because of that, it was so legendary. It goes down in history as one of the top legendary moments in gaming and crossover. This will be a story for years to come. I'm going to put that in my university notes. I'm going to get you on. I'm going to say it now. At West Virginia University, I'm writing the curriculum for mine right now. I'm going to put this in the history books. We're going to seal the deal, Big Rob, because it needs to be known. It was a charismatic difference. I think a lot of people, what they don't realize what you just did was there's a filter and there's a system in someone's head where it's like there's a restriction. It's like, you can't put these two things together. And you're like, why can't I put pineapple on pizza? Says who? Says who? How do you know that the 12% of the market, new client base, might want to eat pineapple? It's money and revenue. And that's a true VP leadership that no one talks about, right? That's the type of people you look for, that you want to work with. Those are people that bring in that type of thing. For someone to excel and work with someone like you, Rob, at a GFUEL, at a WWE, to catch your eye in the corporate world, what do they need to do to have that stuff? Because what you're talking about is a very unique thing that really requires vision and trust, but it also requires discipline and leadership. What do you find in skill sets for people working with you where they can achieve and be very successful with you and your programs?
Yeah, so I'm the type of manager that will give you the keys to the car and let you run with it. You have to be a self-motivator. You have to be a big thinker, and you have to want to work really hard. But work hard for yourself. I think I tell everybody to utilize the brand to make you better. At the end of the day, if you think about it from that mentality, and you're utilizing the brand to get you to become better, ultimately you are going to become better. And I love the self-motivators. I love the folks who have confidence. I love the big thinkers. I love folks who actually think from a marketing mindset first. So you can be a great seller, but think from a marketing mindset first, and it really will resonate with the folks you speak with. And that's kind of it. It's a simple equation. It's get the job done, communicate, over-communicate, and then at the end, it's really all about listening. Because if you're listening correctly to the person across the desk, then you're going to solve whatever equation they're proposing to you and solve it in a really unique and creative way.
Yeah, I love that, and you talk about that unique creative way about being innovative and doing the right things. And one thing that you said is important is I give you the keys. And this is a very dangerous game for a young person, because they really don't realize what you just did. You literally said, I'm going to trust you, and you're going to show me what you really have. Now, there's two types, right? the ones that don't make it and the ones that push it through, right? Now, tell me a story. We don't say names of an example where you're like, come on, man, I know you were doing this. You're trying to fool me. And it's not the thing that you're trying. It's not even the fact that you need to take time off. You got to do something else. You can get it done. It's the fact that you try to fool me about it. That ticks me off, right? And it's a young man's game when they don't realize that. Like when our dads used to give us that same look that you were both giving each other now, right? We're like, why are you giving me that look? Do you think he knew? You're like, yo, he absolutely knew that you were full of crap, right? But in business, you can't play that game. And in business, it's your reputation, right? Is there a story that you could be and you're like, come on, dude, it's so obvious. Don't ever do that again that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think it comes down to just knowing what's reality and what isn't reality. I've been told often that I've been exhausted from doing X, Y, and Z. And then I think you can kind of figure out the type of person I am is I'll do that job just like the person next to me. So if I can accomplish it in umpteen hours and make it, get done in a lot quicker fashion, I think, I know what pushing oneself to exhaustion is like. But in general, I think the people around me just rally. I think that's what makes a great manager and a great boss is they want to run through walls for you. So I've been lucky enough to have really good teams around me. And I think what I try to teach often is manage up in a smart way. Always think about what the question might be that I will ask you before I ask you. So if you're walking into a meeting or a conversation or a discussion, just think about those variables that could arise from what you're going to present, and then make sure you have good answers. I always used to pride myself on walking into a meeting and sort of having solutions. So again, I try to pride the folks that work with me to come with solutions. There's never a bad solution. It's just coming in without a solution is sort of the bad venue. But having an idea.
Coming in without a solution shouldn't happen in a business meeting when you hire someone and they just sit there blankly like I hired you to give me ideas. They're just like, what? Why do you think they do that? Like, I love this generation, man. I love young guys. I love these are my peeps. But like, how the hell are you going to come in a meeting with someone like Rob and me and talk about something big, and then you're giving you advice? Like, I'm basically telling you to tell me how smart you are, and you don't even care enough to do it, man.
Yeah, you said it. I think it's care, right? It's pride. It's care. And it's taking pride in yourself to be better. You can learn from every level, whether it be an assistant, a manager, a vice president, a CEO, a board member. You're constantly learning. So there is no level you can't learn from. So why not have your A game at every aspect of business? And I hope I never stop learning, because I am who I am because I keep learning. And I'll never say I know everything, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I listen. And I listen so intently to everything around me, and that ultimately will make me better. But to your point, I think it's pride. It's coming in with wanting to be the best you possibly can and saying at the end of the day, I gave 110% and, I did my best. And if you can do that every day, you're going to turn out pretty well.
You talk about giving it every day 100%, and you talk about the wrestling and WWE, and you learn from multiple billionaires. I mean, you had access to pick brains and a man who, when I talk about what I want to do in gaming, I want to be the Vince McMahon in gaming. I think I told you at our first meeting, right? And like, because I understood what he was doing and how he created this ecosystem and had The Rock and, get to work with The Rock, and you had Brock Lesnar and him going to UFC and that discussion and that change, him coming back. And you saw Ninja go, from here to Red Bull and back. You've seen a lot of these different changes with these billionaire things. When you talk about a guy like Vince McMahon and a billionaire idea, what are some of the key tips that you've learned that you could share to the world that really separates a billionaire from a millionaire?
It's taking chance and being a visionary. I think when I walked into WWE in 2014, it was the exact time when we launched the WWE Network, which was an OTT network that comprised of a great deal of WWE content, is turned over the content, just like Netflix. And the opportunity there existed for fans to gather as much content as they wanted at the ease of their fingertips to watch WWE at any point in time during the week, during the day. And it was visionary because if you think about it, Vince McMahon really created the pay-per-view model. So you're giving up $69, $70 a show to now let fans stream something for $9.99 a month. I can tell you some of the top executives at NBC and other places had said to me, this makes absolutely no sense. When I
It
look
makes
at,
no sense. Take
exactly.
that. Rob can tell you to stick it. Keep going.
Yeah. So, we were one of the few. Obviously, Netflix was out there, and there was a couple others, Major League Baseball, Advanced Media. Outside of that, it was early stages, and a lot of folks thought we were just doing something that was going to tarnish the ratings on cable television and really hit at our events. And it didn't. It turned out to be one of the best things that we had ever done. And I think people like Vince McMahon have a cusp their fingertips on what's going to be next. And I think that's where the visionaries come, but it's what's next and then taking chances. A lot of people in the corporate world are extremely scared to take chances. And the only way you can move forward and really innovate is to take a chance and kind of listen to the naysayers and have that motivate you to build new technology, build new content, go to places that have never been done before. And that's, again, how I prided myself. And Vince, I felt, has always been there, whether it was during digital media or the example of the WWE Network. He's always taken things to the next level. And that's because of innovation and the willingness to take chances.
And it's scary, man. I'm going to sit here and drink some of this amazing G Fuel that I got because it's got so much energy and knowledge and wealth that you just put out there. You just said it. Scared money doesn't make money. And it's very easy to say, when you said to anybody, you got G Fuel too. Let me just cheers to G Fuel on this. We're cheersing, right? There you go. Oh, you got the right one. I got this one. We're going to talk about this and this new strategy that you're putting in because it's extremely intelligent. I love it. Oh, you got all the good stuff. You got all the fancy stuff. All right. So you talked about how you did this network. Now here's a guy who at this point is doing billionaires. He at this point has turned The Rock into the biggest freaking star in the world. He's won the Monday Night ratings. He's brought Hulk Hogan back. Now he's following the Netflix model, and he's saying, and what you're saying is, I have an individual relationship with my own WWE athlete. And I want to relive the moments of NWO. And I want to understand what happened in WrestleMania 1. And I want to know why Andre got slammed. And I want to relive it because I want nostalgia. But what Vince did, ultimately, you talk about the marketing side, is it meant that I want to buy more stuff. And that's the marketing angle that you're just saying. It transitioned into dollars. And what most people thought was they were talking about rankings and plummeting. The rankings weren't your problems. It was the on-demand buying, the instant access. You were buying the most important thing out of everyone, which was everyone's inability to be patient.
Yep. And
therefore, if I wanted to know what the heck was happening after episode 1 with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and if I wanted to know what was going on and was going to happen in the Royal Rumble, I was going to aggressively, impulsively buy it because that's where 80% of purchases are. Therefore, Rob said, back to marketing. So everyone here is listening. Here's a marketing genius, right? And that's why it did what it did. And what was the numbers that transitioned from the I don't want to do it from the big TV executives that knew the space, but they didn't know the customer base. That's the difference. You know your space, but you don't know my customer base. And you're hiring me to get to my customer base is what you basically said to them. What was the numbers when they told you guys it wasn't a good idea and it turned out to be a pretty good idea that first couple of years into it?
Yeah, the numbers were good. We saw a huge transition of folks wanting to join. And we also learned a lot about sort of that customer base. We learned a lot about the customers, that it was a younger demographic going on the OTT channel. They were accessing the content through their gaming consoles. There was a lot of learning, but we always talk about trying to get younger. And Vince knew that if we continued to get younger, we would grow a whole new audience. And that also meant splicing a lot of the content, putting it on Instagram, Snapchat, and other avenues where we knew the eyeballs were going to be. So it's not only being in one place, but it's being everywhere that our fans are. And we did that extremely well through social channels as well.
That's right. Everywhere where our fans are means you can put it on your phone whenever you want. Yeah. And that was an ingenious idea, And it's crazy, right? You do this from Vince, but Vince didn't do everything, right? There's things that he tried and he put, and it didn't work the way he wanted it to, but he still continued to do that, right? And it wasn't just about, I think when you make big money and you're in our positions and you do these big moves, like when it goes bad, it gets in your own head, right? Because you're at a certain age, like I can't make these mistakes. Says who, right? No one tries to screw up on purpose. Everyone's just trying to be happy. Everyone's just trying to feed our families, right? That's all we want in this world. The XFL, right? We're going to talk about this, right? Didn't work, pulls it back up, and now The Rock owns it. Tell me about this a little bit, man. What were your thoughts about this? How did he take it from that? I know what the purpose of it was, which I thought was extremely amazing. And then how did it disappear to come back where The Rock now has it and it's about to pop back up?
Yeah. So again, remember, Vince McMahon is the same guy who maxed out his credit cards for WrestleMania 1 in Madison Square Garden to pull off one of the biggest events and game-changing events ever. So he was willing to take chances at such an early stage in his life. Fast forward to the XFL, the first iteration didn't really fly. Then he did it a second time. And honestly, he really worked on creating it the second time and looking at technology. If you look at the webcam that flies around NFL games today, that was because of the first iteration of the XFL. That was something that he had created to make the viewing experience a lot more fun. So fast forward to XFL number 2, right before COVID hit, it was a pretty interesting play for football and a good alternative during a time where the NFL was off season. Unfortunately, I think it could have kept going. I thought that the teams and the locations were in some great places. And unfortunately, COVID shut that down. Now you kind of have to figure out the whole marketplace and the economy has changed. And in this case, The Rock came out and purchased the assets from that bankruptcy and is now bringing it to fruition now. And The Rock is a pretty big star. So I have a lot of confidence that he'll be able to build something pretty interesting for the fans around it.
I mean, you absolutely could smell what he was cooking when he went ahead and bought the XFL and his journey and his ability to just have the supreme confidence. You know, there's one thing I want to talk about The Rock in a second, but I want to talk about the one thing you said about Vince McMahon about the credit card thing. You and I know, writing the books as entrepreneurs in our own journeys, working with different businesses. You know, I was at Deloitte as a managing partner. I remember how great life was when we had the corporate account and how corporate cards worked and your ability to take a client to eat and make those calls. And then as an entrepreneur, when I was doing the same thing, it was like, this is my own corporate card. You know, do we pay the electric bill today and the business, or do we pay for our home? And people don't talk about that journey. And you have to have enough confidence to not let anyone else know that and really believe that your product is so supreme. Where I said this a million times, I'll say it again. You have to have more confidence in yourself than everyone else's doubts. You have to have more confidence in yourself than the doubt of your mother, your father, your wife, your best friend, your CEO, everyone, that you can make this work, because that's really what it took. And he emptied out his credit card. I don't think people understand like how impossible that is. That's like a 1% thing, with the risk of him knowing that he could lose it all and it not work with creditors and going from that. I mean, it just takes balls, bro, like straight up giant ass balls to do so, right? But it's calculated, right? And I think that's a difference. You know, when you talk about that and you think about that moment of a man who's now worth $1 billion and the balls to do that, people don't do that often in business, right? I mean, you don't really see that. You see people holding themselves back. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's what changes the success rate for an entrepreneur to have that kind of confidence and that sort of mentality. It is few and far between, but you have to believe in yourself. And we always talk about confidence being a major factor in anything you do in business. In the case of Vince, he believed in his brand. He believed in what he was building, and knew that if he put on what he envisioned, which was WrestleMania 1 at Madison Square Garden, that the fans would really take to it. And fast forward, and it's just an incredible show to today. But it is, you got to have confidence. You have to take chances, and you just got to believe in yourself. You're your biggest critic, and everyone around you can kind of take you down very easily. But if you believe in yourself, you can get through pretty much anything.
So much inspiration there, and believe in yourself. Everyone has to realize that in life, there's just really one thing that you only have one chance to get this done. You know, it's not easy. Nobody has it figured out. You really have to figure it out. You know, the time is now, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Cena,
the time is now. And Rob, when you did the time is now, The Rock. You got this guy who came in. I remember watching the very first episode. Actually, I know a couple of guys from the Young Rock. They're my friends. I know Brett Azar, who plays Iron Sheik, through my podcast. Wayne Matty, who plays Sergeant Slaughter. Like I told you, man, I'm a real fan. There's no cap. You know, and I want to talk about him and his journey. And what's been crazy about that, now he's the biggest freaking star in the history of the world. But when he came in, he was supposed to be the next legend, right? The baby face, right? The same thing Roman Reigns. It's like, how can you not like the Maivia family, right? Or Rikishi or Yoko. It's like, these are like royalty, right? The Hearts, the same thing. And everybody hates the royalty families. I've never understood this. I as a wrestling fan, have never understood how you could hate this. And it was like, he basically sucked, right? And I remember him going to the Royal Rumble, and I was like, who is this guy, right? Maivia, trying to put it together. And then it clicked.
Yep.
Right? It changed. And I remember hearing the story from multiple people that it was really difficult because he's such a nice human being, like genuinely like me and you, we're just good guys. And nobody likes to be the bad guy. I hate firing people. I hate yelling. Like when I had to do it, I probably spent 2 nights later, like crying a little bit and getting upset and feeling bad that I did that, right? Because it's not who I am. And this guy is changing his whole entire persona to be this arrogant, the complete opposite of who he really is from what I've heard from everybody that knows him. And now becomes the biggest superstar. Tell me about that transition and the basically faith in rechanging your character to become something better.
Yeah, he's a rare talent where he has an extreme greatness from a mic skills perspective, and he's a great wrestler and turned himself into a superb wrestler. That combination is really hard to find. You mentioned Roman Reigns, and I don't really believe Roman Reigns ever really conquered it to the point of getting to a John Cena or a Rock stature. It is a really hard thing to do. I've seen some folks who have mastered the mic skills, but then others who couldn't wrestle. But the combination of the two is the difference in what makes you a true superstar. And John Cena did it. He had to work. When the writers are great at WWE, you can't take anything away from the writers, but they figured out the perfect persona. And then John Cena went with it and launched it and got a huge fandom. There was going to be, and there always will be, 2 sides of the arena, one that is for John Cena and one that is not. And you can hear the chants when you're in the arena for that to happen. And it's kind of funny. And it's not in a negative way. It's just some don't like John Cena and some really do like him. And then the 2 groups come together, and it's a really fun experience to watch and hear.
I don't know how you don't like John Cena, man. I mean, he's a rapper. You can't see me, right? He's got his arms are so massive. It's funny, the Bella twins, their cousin is a guy, one of my good friends named Rob, and they grew up together. So he always tells me the story. I'm telling you, I've always been around this thing. Like, it's the craziest story, right? Rob is like the Bella twins. I mean, the guy is like 6'2", San Diego, good looking guy. I got to make sure this is on the podcast. I throw him on there. And he's like running all of Mexico City in the real estate market, right? And his family runs basically all of San Diego. And he's like, oh, my cousins are the Bella twins. I'm like, of course you good-looking people all look the same. I mean, it's crazy, And you talk about the charisma of John and his ability to transition. Mark's a friend of mine, Wahlberg. I've been at his house. Shout out to Cowboy, who's part of our media company. I remember Cowboy told me when they had the movie with John Cena coming in and Will Ferrell, and how funny John is, right? And his obsessive love to learning Zhongwen, Mandarin, right? Yeah. And his Lao Dama thing that he put, he's like, I wasn't getting paid for this. And me as a Chinese person, I'm like laughing my ass off. I'm like, dude, this is John Cena, and his pronunciation is Northern Chinese, not bad. How did John get to where he's at? Like, tell me about this movie side of it and working with someone like that, and how a guy like John and Rock, basically 2 almost completely different animals, can still stand on their own and be so unique in their acting career and the support from doing that. Tell me about
John's
that.
Brilliant. As you mentioned, the Mandarin, he is fluent in Mandarin. He's just an amazing person because he really studied his trait and he understands how to do it and bring it to life. He's got that great comedic side. He can be very serious at times as well. But he's really grown up in the industry and done it in a fantastic way. What you can't forget is that all of the superstars in WWE are truly actors. They're actors that are great athletes as well as really great at performing. They know their lines. We used to work with brands, and brands would be amazed that we could pull off a commercial with a superstar in 15 to 20 minutes. They were like, no, I think we need 3 to 5 hours worth of time. That's not the case. WWE, they're on 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. Again, we're putting on about 550 shows a year. That's amazing when you think about having to be on that often. So when it comes to doing scripts and being part of a comedic and or some sort of more serious type of role in movies, these guys can do it. And in the case of John Cena, boy, did he conquer it. And, he's still rising. There is no slowing down.
Yeah, there is no ceiling for John Cena, man. I had to drink more G Fuel because I got to be honest with you, man. You need a little bit more energy. 550 shows. I can't even commit to a Netflix account, Rob, and you got 550 shows. I'm still using my fiance's. 550? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
This is something I talk about a lot in managing people, right? They're great ones. I'll tell you the story, man. It's December 23rd of this last year. I'm on these crazy calls, and I remember I was calling one of my team members, and I was talking about the things they needed to get done, right before the holidays. And I remember them basically freaking out and saying to my other person that there's no way we're going to be able to get this done in this time because, no one's just doing anything. And I remember when I told who I was with, I said, I just had a call with the minister of Malaysia, the CEO of Ford Models, and literally the vice president of Cloud9 Training Grounds on the 23rd, and nobody said that to me, right? It's that 550. It's the ability to break among the limitations that you set forth, that you can do one task a day, or I can only do one show a day, and I can do 550. And it's the ability to have everyone around you believe in that. What is a leadership skill that you could give advice to that you've seen that can motivate 550 shows in 365 days a year?
Yeah, I think when you put in the case of WWE, we were putting smiles on people's faces. And I think that's a trait that's pretty awesome, that every show brought smiles to certain faces. And then on top of that, there were memories. So you rattle off a bunch of different memories of WWE. Same thing goes for every fan throughout every generation. There's always a memory, whether you're with your dad, your sister, your mother, your friends, your college roommates. There is a memory that is built, but there's also a smile that gets brought to your face when you think of an experience where you talk about George the Animal Steel, or you talk about The Undertaker to bring something more relevant to today's world, or John Cena. But it's those things that kind of motivate you to continue doing what you do. And in the case of 550 events, both domestically and internationally, I think at the end of the day, when you're bringing smiles to people's faces across the world, I think that's the motivational factor that people really, really do enjoy. And for me, that was what I was trying to do. I was trying to attribute a brand to an iconic event like WrestleMania and, link them together so that for years and years, people experienced the WrestleMania that Snickers sponsored and could always kind of bring a smile to their face and resonate a memory.
Man, I'm going to have to say this without a doubt, man. I'm going to give you a hell yeah. I'm going to have to do that again because it was so good. I'm going to play it twice. That's what you did. I mean, Rob, these smiles that we're having is what Disney did.
Yep.
It's why I say I want to be the biggest fan of esports. It's I will touch you forever and you will watch Aladdin with me and my kid and your grandkids. Yeah. That moment, I remember this, dude. We're same age, and I remember I watched Aladdin with my little sister, my best friend. I don't know if she ever listens to my podcast. If she does, everyone can tell her she's my best friend. And we're so close, Rob, because her husband is my best friend from college. That's a weird story. Me and you could have beer and talk about that separately, right? But I live 5 minutes from him in Phoenix. But my niece is there, and we watched Aladdin as kids. And then Aladdin comes out, and now I'm taking her daughter to Aladdin, watching it in movie theaters. And now Aladdin is my favorite movie because of the experience. It wasn't the movie. It was that moment that you're selling, the experience. I'll never forget it. That hits the community of fans. How, as you're building these community of fans, you've also built ones in different segments. And I want to talk about Eddie Guerrero. Eddie, friend, family of ours from El Paso. His daughter is a friend of ours. I don't know if you know this, but his daughter worked at my businesses and my bars. I don't know if I told you this. It's really, this is how small this world works, right? And Eddie, in the wrestling world, El Paso, our main producer, photographer, he does all, shout out to Ace, does all the good wrestlers and all that stuff over there. But that was the first time where we were really looking at the Lucha series because of what WCW was doing. Yep. We saw that they were doing the Lucha, they were doing the cruiserweights, and Vince had to react because it was no longer about the big dudes and the roid issues. It was about everybody fighting fair. and he turned that negative into a positive, because at that point it was weight classes, right? And then it just became, well, it's just talent and anybody can beat the big guy, right? Rey Mysterio can beat freaking the Big Show at 7 foot whatever when his hands the size of freaking Rey, right? And it gives you the hope, right? So you're selling hope experience for everybody in the world, no matter what you are, right? And this is why you got into gaming. I'm going to talk about that in a second, because I know that's why you did, because that's why I did it. And you guys went into Eddie Ladd. Now this guy now becomes, Eddie's not a big dude. I mean, he's a big dude, but he's not a big dude, right? Like I met Brock, and Brock's a big dude, right? And this guy becomes Latino heat, bad guy, everything opposite of who he is as a man and a dad. And he wins the championship. Tell us about why that journey was set up and how it helped influence the Latin market, but also how it changed the game.
Yeah, I think we listened to the fans, and the fans wanted that. And so that eventually was what came to fruition. And I think that's, again, goes back to what I mentioned earlier about listening. You can listen in a business meeting, you can listen in an interview, but you also, to make something really good, you have to understand community. And we understood community, and we understand community at GFUEL just like we understand it at World Wrestling Entertainment. You have to listen to what the fans want. And in that case, the fans wanted that at that time. Another good example is Daniel Bryan, like very small superstar that you probably wouldn't think would become a champion. And because of all the excitement the fans brought when they saw him, eventually he became that champion. And you got to listen to the fans. The fans know best.
You got to listen to the fans. The fan knows best. What a great business practice. Now, let's talk about the fans knowing best, and we're moving forward. We had something else that shifted phenomenally that I think was another almost blessing in collaboration worlds. Brock freaking Lesnar. Now, I've met Brock once, and I'm 6'5", 280, and I will tell you, Brock, at whatever weight that man is 2 times my freaking width.
Yeah.
I can palm a basketball, and he made my hand feel like I was 8 years old, okay? And he's 6'3". I mean, this guy is, I can't even describe. I mean, he is just a beast, right? And now he's this beast, and he's winning titles, and he's throwing people around. And then he goes to the UFC, right? And he fights my boy Frank. Shout out Frank Mir, how you doing, right? And they're fighting, right? And he loses. And he goes back and he beats him. Now he's got Jimmy Johns. And it almost, for me, set a validation. And he's probably the only one, no offense to everyone else, but let's just be honest, because he won the title, that actually showed that these fake wrestlers, we never say fake, I'm not getting chopped, I'll never say it, but this entertainment-driven purpose vehicle of these men who are doing these impossible feats. I've been in the ring for 30 minutes, I walked out of the ring and I said, you know what, let's play video games. I mean, that's a man's world, dude. I can do things, there's nothing I can do like that. I mean, it's a whole different level. You get slammed and you slam it wrong, you're in a concussion. Game's over. The amount of trust and balls and precision are than anything else. And now you have this opportunity, and this guy's going from fighting to going from there. Tell me about that market angle and what your thoughts about that when Brock goes into UFC and then now comes back to WWE.
Yeah, it was a huge moment for WWE. One, you had a real legitimate UFC fighter that was transitioning into WWE. And you can't forget, and I know we're talking about Brock, but don't forget Ronda Rousey. She was
I can't forget Ronda.
Right? Like Ronda did that same thing, and Ronda did it in a really wild way. And Ronda was always a big fan of Roddy Piper back in the day, so there was some synergy there. But yeah, you can't take away what the importance was that Brock did for WWE. I also want to say that during that tenure, you also started to see ESPN start to cover us. That was never happening. You could never see anything of a highlight about WWE on ESPN before. But
we couldn't see it.
Right. But all of a sudden now it's a thing because of Ronda and because of Brock, and that barrier has been broken. So you start to see that there are really athletes behind this persona of a superstar, and Brock did it like nobody else.
You know, it's crazy. One of our brand ambassadors that plays with us is Uriah Hall, right? Sure. And Uriah's part of our NACL family, right? You know, our brand ambassador streams. And, you know, Overflow, one of the other guys, right? He's part of our group too. And I think it's funny because when you talk about Uriah says, the first time I ever learned how to fight was because I remember I was getting picked on in Jamaica, Queens. And I was playing Tekken, and the spinning backhand, remember that one? Right? He ends up doing it, and he knocks some kid out. And that was why he uses that as his finisher for UFC, right? And he does that. And it was through the gaming aspect, right? That collaboration of all those things that you're putting together. Now you're on this amazing journey in G Fuel, and you've seen the next evolution, right? You've seen something that is different. You've seen what I've seen, a Target G. People are like, I don't know about gaming. I'm like, you don't know anything about gaming. What you need to know is it targets X and Z and millennials, and you have $0 of that share.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you tell them. That's what I tell them, right? Same thing.
Yeah, it's that important. And that's the demographic that you want to be talking to at the moment.
As you're talking to that demographic, right? And you see the crossovers that are pushing through, you guys have done some pretty crazy things, right? Let's talk about one of my favorite guys, the Vegas House. I got to shout out to all my boys, right? Merc, Mish, Slayer, Cryptic, Miz, right? You saw someone like Merc, and I'm this kid since he was 17, so I'm going to give him a big shout out. He's actually been on the podcast before. I met Merc because when I invested into FaZe, he literally messaged me on Twitter, was like, my name is Merc. Would you like to meet up in New York? And I looked at my fiance and I was like, this is really interesting. Okay. And now he's 21. I'm in his birthday, right? And I saw a kid who was getting picked on, who nobody believed in, who came from very difficult circumstances, who's basically, you know, he has very difficult circumstances. He has Asperger's, right? He's on the spectrum, right? His dad is in a wheelchair, and he's really doing this on his own. And I saw this kid that just through G Fuel and gaming and FaZe gave him hope, man. Like the hope that you and I as 12-year-olds, like maybe now as we're living, we're giving each other's high fives, like through the air. We're like, oh yeah, that was a cool moment, right? Like we're doing this at a massive scale through gaming. And in a little way, I pray that we're making this world a better place, because as we're getting older now, we start focusing on words like legacy, right? And what is the meaning of my life? It can't just be monetary. It can't just be, you know, my own selfish experiences. It has to be a greater thing. And I think that's a big reason why you saw this segment. And now you have the kid who's drinking every single day, and he gets his own flavor. Tell me about why G Fuel and what you saw in that, and how you go from, you know, working with all these big guys and seeing the opportunity in this world.
Yeah, so we often talk about being the Funko Pop of beverages. We are, as I mentioned earlier as well, a company where people collect and consume. And it's just so cool to think about it in that fashion, because you don't see that in the beverage world. But we have such a fandom behind us that it's exciting. And I feel like it's a badge when a new talent comes on our roster, when a talent gets a chance. How many beverages out there are giving, you know, a chance for you to have your name and your image and your IP on a can? It just doesn't happen. So I feel like we're, just like I talked about putting smiles on people's faces in World Wrestling, we put smiles on people's faces because we give them an opportunity that no other brand would ever do. We're putting their intellectual property, their likeness, onto a beverage and then distributing it, you know, globally, both in stores like Walmart, Target. And that's something that I think people are really proud of to be associated with. And we do it at the top level. We don't do shortcuts. We make sure that graphics and content behind the launches are really top notch. And I think content providers see that. And I think talent, in the examples that you just chose, are folks that really believe in our brand, and then we believe in them. It's a two-way street. It's not just one way. We utilize your IP and we don't do anything further. We have a huge social reach. So we're going to help promote you and build your community up, just like you're going to help build and promote G Fuel. And I think content providers as well as partners see that fact, and I think they want to be a part of it. And that's what we really pride ourselves on doing.
You know, what's amazing about what you just said is you do something unique in a business model that we do, which is, you know, when we talk about our big tournament that we're having this year, our Wolverhampton tournament, I mentioned this one to you, where we do 5,000 kids from all around the world playing FIFA, right? From every country in Latin America, the US. We go against our college guys, we go against our celebrity guys. The winners play out for 12 weeks. They get a chance to start for the Wolves team, the English Premier League team. It's because we want you to know that in any part of your journey, whether it's in gaming or whether it's your belief in having your face on it and a can, or whatever it is, right? Or, these two kids who are basically living their dreams, me and you, shout out to me and you and 12-year-old me and you. We've totally gotten along our whole entire lives. Like we've been the best friends, hands down, dude. Right. And now you're giving that, right? That deeper inspiration. And I think a lot of brands miss that mark. I think when it comes to companies and consumers, like it turns me off working with people because they don't care.
Yeah.
But when we do our experiences like that, like who the hell else can play a video game and try out for an English Premier League team started from our nonprofit? We do. We don't do that because we're making money. We're not doing that because it's all out of notoriety. We're doing that because we care and we're praying that those other things happen, the good intentions of the world,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And those good intentions is what built this product and really started formulating that opportunity for people to come in. And now you guys have expanded, right? Because you've realized there's a segmented market here, right? You have WWE guys. This one I'm drinking has a little guy named Ryan Reynolds. Shout out to Ryan. What's up there, right? Now you're looking in the movies and films and crossing over in C-stores. As you're moving in that movement, what is your thought process on that? And how is that working as a strategy with a very crazy economy?
Yeah, so you never want to dilute the community you were built on. And we were built on gamers. We're always going to be in the gaming world. But I think the interesting part is as we go into entertainment and other areas, sports, music, comedy, etc., you start to realize something that you brought up earlier is that when you were talking about the superstars and how they play their switches, etc., that there's a casual gamer in all of us, and every household has that sort of casual gamer as well. So we've definitely targeted the more serious gamer, but there's a huge spectrum of folks out there that are more of a casual gamer. So as we expand more into C stores and big stores like Walmart and Target, that opportunity becomes much more massive for us because we believe that there's a lot of folks that can actually resonate from the G Fuel messaging and the ingredients and the healthier alternative to other energy drinks and why G Fuel. We are a community and we stand by our community and we continue to grow our community. It's an exciting time for us. We've built obviously a caffeine product from an energy perspective. We're in hydration now. We started out as just an energy formula, something that you would take a shaker and just shake it up. But the evolution of the brand is great to watch. Just like every other big company, you want to evolve, and you want to evolve in a way, just like we talked about with WWE, evolve in a way that's good for your consumers and community. In this case, we now launched a ready-to-drink can, which is awesome for our community members. They don't, in some cases, have to clean a shaker cup. They can actually go to their local convenience store and go buy a ready-to-drink can, open it up, drink it, throw it away, get another one, or go and buy it and collect it. So we try to evolve, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of doing that in this marketplace and during this economy.
I'm going to tell you, I was in the energy drink game, like you probably would have figured in the 08 days, like mentioned that to you one time, right, on one of our calls, right? So, and I remember we were trying to do the party scene, the nightclub scene, right? American Junkie in Phoenix, we hit that. Rockstar was barely kind of doing it. Monster was doing, the extreme sports stuff. Red Bull was just Red Bull, right? They had the biggest market cap. We're all like, oh, how the hell we're going to beat these guys, right? Then here comes the freaking shot, and it changes the game. We're like, oh my God, for 12 cents, that's all it costs, and you're gonna make $5.99, and I'm doing $1.10, including a 12-cent freaking tab. That's how you know I'm no cap when I'm talking about this, guys, okay? Because Rob knows what I'm talking about, right? And I have to do ball and Wrexham and wait in freaking line with $2.50 order, and if I don't, Coke's gonna tell me to F off because they're gonna go next. Okay, this is interesting. These guys go powder form. They went a step further. They're like, forget this. Forget the cans. Forget canning. Let me go look at the freaking weightlifter stuff. I'm like, man, how the hell did I not think about this, right? And then they go to gamers. And me, as a motivational speaker, doing business all day long, podcast, when I look at brand deals and I'm drinking my drinks, I was drinking Red Bull, right? I was drinking Red Bull because of what I was. But now this is sitting there in the C stores, or Merck conveniently gave this one to me when we're in the Grammys. I'm drinking it because for me, I'm in business, but for me, this is more me because I am making big deals. I am closing multi-billion-dollar deals. I'm putting DeLorean and rolling collabs together, right? I'm doing NACL, but I'm a fucking gamer. I do it every single month. I literally do tournaments every single month. I play every single day. You hit the crossover on the money because it's us, the 40-year-olds. We're not 40, we're in our 20s. Guys who are now the guys who are shifting the market. We see it with Marty McFly shoes at 70. We see it with freaking The Rock's rookie card now at $10,000. We did that, and you pushed that through, and it was an amazing thing. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about one more couple things. You and your books. You and yourself. Tell me about that, man, because people don't know that about you, but there's a real different, amazing side. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so interesting, and this was something that came to fruition literally in partnership with my father. My dad had a pretty decorated background, intelligence officer in the military, and had traveled extensively for many, many years in the Far East and areas that I could only dream about going someday. And I approached him at one point during COVID and said, hey, things are going pretty well. Work is good. Everything's going well. But you know what? I'd love to know a little bit about you, and just kind of could you write a page or 2 pages just about your background? And that page or so turned out to about 350 pages of a story named Bad Boy that was all about my dad. And fast forward, and I had said, hey, you know what? Like, let's start to take some of these books and some of these writings and start to publish them. And we worked through it. And fast forward to today, we've got about 10 books out, about seven audiobooks, both on Kindle and distributed worldwide across Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million. So it's been a pretty fun run to be in the publishing industry and be able to work with my father in such a close and intimate way that we're able to bring to life the characters that, as he says, like a circus collects animals, he's collected people along his entire life. And Dad just turned 86 and is sharp as a tack, but he's got some pretty amazing stories about spies and espionage and all kinds of fun things. So we've been able to bring those to life and have a lot of fun doing it together.
I'm going to commit that when you get this thing done, since I didn't ever get the job at WWE for vice president of China, which I know you're probably like, damn, we should have hired this cat, right? I'm going to commit to helping bring that story into Asia, man, if you allow me to. It's inspiring. And let me tell you why, man. I think we grew up in a really interesting era. And I want to wrap that by talking about our journeys, and I think this is important. We got real lucky because I think what you and I did was we never gave up on ourselves. And the reason that people like superstars and athletes is because they never quit on their dreams. That's it. And if I right now out there, if you're an athlete, if you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you're an actor, you're doing exactly the same thing that me and Rob are doing. You're business people. You're just trying to make the sale that someone will believe in you and just give you the shot that you're going to make it. It doesn't matter if you're 40, 30, 20, VP of GFUEL, whatever I am in this world. We're all going through the same journey, right? It is and no one talks about that because everyone is just here to be happy and everyone's here just trying to make it and have time with our families, right? And the inspiration was you spent these 2 years and you thought you knew your father, but then you know your father. What we often learn in times is we learn that as parents and people, we don't get to be Rob, we got to be Rob, VP of GFUEL. We have to be David Chen, the president of ACL. I don't get to be David Chen who gets to goof off and play video games and probably could go with Rob and be like, yo, let's just do this and be dumb about it and talk about it like kids, because it matters in this world. That I think the reason that we do that is because when you're young and we have children and nieces and nephews, you really understand what innocence is. Mm-hmm. You really understand how quickly the world robs it from us. You really understand how unfair it is to people. Some people just wanted a fair chance. Like I came to this country homeless, right? And I just wanted a fair chance in life. And thank God I was able to pull that off, right? And everyone in their journeys. And now you write the 7 series, this book with your dad. I mean, like that took balls, man. Like I can't imagine going up to my dad and the fear of my dad telling me no. And maybe your dad told you no, right? And maybe you were like in the middle of the journey because you're like, dude, this is so frustrating. I don't even know why I signed myself up for this, right? Like things like that. But the end result was something that you did is that you ingrained your history, your family's history for legacies to come. I often wonder about my great-grandparents on how I'm 99.5% Chinese. I did that 23andMe, and I'm like, yo, I have to be Samoan somewhere at this rate. No, I'm 99.5% Chinese, okay, all right? And somehow, some way, have ended up in the United States with talking to you, but you cemented that, and he did things that like no one did. Tell me about that. Like, how did you have the guts to do that, man?
Yeah,
And why? The why? Because that's important for people to understand.
legacy for sure is a huge part of it, and he is leaving a legacy. We're leaving a legacy back with everything he's doing and still doing. The why is really because God, I care for my father a great deal, loved him, gave me a great upbringing, is who I am today because of him. But he had so much knowledge and so much history and such a wealth of information and travel and experiences that I don't think even reading the books, you can believe that it's actually happened to a man like that. And me being able to work with him to bring that out in book form and audiobook form, hopefully one day with maybe your help, we can figure out how to put a movie together. It's going to be something that generations will read and really respect and learn. And I'm excited that I'm able to do that. We always talked about where we are in life now and being able to give back. And I feel his stories, his knowledge, and his travels will give back to generations for years to come.
That's amazing, man. Now, I want you to tell me one of your favorite quick personal stories that just resonated with you, like the first one that pops in your head.
Yeah. So when I was at Rice University, I had a chance to go to Easter and become Easter brunch and dinners with Barbara Bush and George Bush 41, the former president of the United States, and became a mentor for me throughout my career up until his death a couple of years ago. And that was an experience that when you get a chance to be with a president and be that close to a president, again, you pinch yourself and say, this is just too incredible to really truly believe. And then when you have correspondence with that president for years after, it is something that has definitely shaped me for the person who I am today.
You know, it's funny how this world works. You know, I'm learning a lot of synergies. My fiance's father, Katie, was a colonel in the military, but he worked for Bush Sr. as his military aide in the White House,
No kidding.
and Reagan as his personal aide in the White House.
Unbelievable.
So
Two great experiences. Wow.
I will promise you that your dad probably knows Terry. Shout out to my father-in-law, love him. And that's what we talk about, how the energy and the synergy is, you know, and you know, that's such an amazing story. And I want to touch off. I went to this party last night. We were at the Super Bowl party, and I remember walking into it. And the story kind of goes like this. I'm gonna tell you real quick, but I kind of want to ask this last part of the experience about how the universe works and your belief in the intentions in this universe, right? Last time I'm sitting here going to this party, we had a great Grammy party the weekend before, and we are sitting here, and at 2:00 I go to this meeting, and I run in. The guy who's business developing me says, "Hey, this is my friend's party. It's called Brand Innovators." Well, it turns out Scott Harkey, who's the big dude in Brand Innovators here in Arizona, is my friend. I know him. I know Napoleon from Ninja Turtles. I know Jason Harvey from Wonder Years. I've met him all 3 different times, all 3 different places, and they all met me in different things, and we all knew each other, right? So I ended up seeing him. Then I run into one of our brand content creators, Jalen Hanley, his dad, Craig, who just wanted to meet me again second time. He just happens to be there. So I was with his son in LA on Saturday, and I'm with his dad on Monday, coincidence. Then I run in, and there's Big Poppy and Brandon Marshall, and you know, we're trying to talk to them about some things, and that kind of threw me off. And then when I walk out, I run into the foundation that Roland introduced us to at our previous event because we did such a great job there, and they wanted to work the foundation. And the girl goes, "David," she's like, "It's so weird. I was just talking about your event at the Grammys and how fun it was and how different the experience was and how we want to do it at all our events. Come here." And I literally knew everybody there. When I show up there, I run into the person I did a solar project with Akon I ran into my former partner that was solar private equity firm. I ran into everybody. Then Alba Black comes on, he sings the Grammys, we take a photo, we interview him on our news network. At 2:00 in the afternoon, I had no idea I was gonna do all this stuff. And I ran into everybody I could imagine significant under the sun that did something in my life coming together. Those magical moments of good intention.
Yep.
Where a lot of young people in their 20s don't realize that in 20 years you're gonna run into somebody.
Yeah.
Tell me a story that resonates with you, that you truly believe in, like that there's a universal good intention thing and why we should lead with that in business and in life, Rob.
Yeah, it is who you know in life. There's a little luck, there's a little timing, but it comes down to who you know. And it's moments like what you and I are doing right now that you and I will catch up again in 6 months to a year, whenever it might be. And we'll always reflect back to that time that you invited me onto this podcast and the chance to share my stories and give me a platform to do that. And that's something that I'll never forget. And that's a memory and a friendship and something that will never leave me. But it's about networking. It's about staying in touch with people. It's about caring for people. You mentioned that as well. And by doing all three of those things, it's going to help you in life in many, many ways. One, you're going to create a great friend network. And that's first and foremost is build friendship first. Business comes second. It will always be there because friends want to work together and there's a trust factor with friends. There's very many factors and times that I've run into people in airports or at a Super Bowl party, which you'll probably do in Phoenix. No matter where I am, there's always sort of a network of folks that I've worked with and been with and built friendships around that have always been part of my network. And I'll say it again and reiterate it. It's all about who you know. And it's not just calling somebody and saying, hey, I'm looking for a job, but actually finding time to call somebody and say, just wish them a happy birthday or congratulate them on their marriage or their wedding, whatever it might be. And just keep that conversation going all throughout your lifetime because people are great and friends are even more important to you than ever. And you'd be amazed how many times that friend network has come forth and helped me out. Even the George Bush example, President Bush provided me with a business reference that I literally slid across the table at MTV when I was trying to get that job. And
Let's go.
I swear I did. And the funny story behind that is that interviewer actually called the number on that piece of paper, which was the business reference that George had given me. And it rang into President Bush's office and they quickly hung up, but told me the story a little bit after and kind of giggled at it just because it's a wild story. But that's what networking is all about. And even in the case of my MTV employer, that interviewee is still one of my closest confidants and friends and a mentor to me. And it's all about networking and staying close to people.
Man, I think it is. Boy, man, what a life, bro. What a journey, man. I mean, as busy as we are, man, Rob, you're so busy, but I appreciate you doing this. And I hope it helps everyone understand, like me and Rob and all of us, even this moment, like we don't take enough time to reflect and appreciate and understand and just give ourselves a round of applause. And Rob, I'm going to give you a round of applause, man, because you're changing the world in ways that you will never know. And you're helping kids. And there's another David Chin and Rob out there that's listening to this right now that in 20 years from now will come to us and say, hey, I remember this show. I remember this thing. I remember that moment. This is my WWE moment. This is my WrestleMania 3, right? And you're doing that, man. And I hope that you continue to do that in this journey because the world is too big and impossible for us not to meet at the standards that we did and the ability to do so. And I thank you for sharing that with our audience, man. Now,
Yeah.
Rob, before you leave, I want people to know about the book, where they can get it and the title, and also your social media handles as well, so they can follow the big Rob, the boss, for more knowledge and brand awareness because he's changing the world. And you got to learn from the big man. Give us a little bit about the book and the handles, please.
Yeah, David, thank you so much again. There's a reason why this is such a well-known podcast and appreciate the opportunity to be on this platform. I speak to you all the time and tell you I'm always amazed at what you're doing and how much you're doing at one time.
550, baby. That's my shot. 550 a year. That's how I roll.
I love it. You multitask like no one I ever knew. But with regards to sort of where you can get the books, obviously Amazon handles everything. You can get the audiobooks through Audible, Amazon, iTunes. It's under Harris L. Kligman. You can find all the books under that. It's Harris Kligman. And then from my perspective, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I love the community. It's always pretty upbeat. You can find me on Instagram and other places. But if there's questions, if there's business opportunities, feel free to give me a ring. I check my ego at the door. I think that's kind of how I sum up myself. So anyone can really approach me. If you got questions about business and or just an inquiry in general, please feel free to reach out. And David, again, thank you for this platform. It means a ton to me and is a special moment in my life.
It's a special moment to me too, Rob. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate. I mean, I wish it could be longer. I think we could probably do this like another hour, but I know we're running out of time because we both have to go back to work and actually be adults, which sucks because this is why we're doing this. So we don't have to be adults. I mean, it's crazy, man. I'd rather just do this. Like, I got to show everyone my office in Phoenix. There's the funny part about this. Like, the non-adult side of me, right? Here's my Mario. Here's my Batman. Here's my Legos. I'm talking to Rob, the VP here at GFUEL, but you got to stay a kid. You got to be true to yourself and lead with that intention and don't do things that 12-year-old you would be ashamed of.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think the world wants you to not do that, but you got to look at that. And so for Rob and David Chen, thank you for joining us in an amazing edition of Panama's podcast. Have faith, love yourself, love one another, be kind, and we'll see you guys next week. Stay blessed.